All right, everybody, welcome back to Zach Archer TV, where I talk about everything movies, television, and reality TV, all here on the channel. All right, I wanted to try doing this. Let's see if I can make it a regular thing or not. We'll see if it sticks or not. Let me know what you think. I want to have some fun and talk about all the movies I watched in the previous month. And, that's fun enough by itself. I thought about just doing that, but I thought it might be more enjoyable to put it in the context of a ranking. I've always really liked ranking things, even if it can be arbitrary and reductive sometimes. I do really enjoy just the fun of it. Like on Letterboxd, you can check out my Letterboxd. I track every movie I watch. I'll put a review of it, whether it's just a couple sentences or a few paragraphs, depending on my thoughts. But I'll do every single one. I'll rate at least all the movies I watch. Even if I do tweak it from time to time, like definitely a few of these movies in here I had lower, made them higher, and adjusted different ways. But on my Letterboxd, as I'm going throughout the year, I'm constantly ranking the movies. Like every movie I've watched this year, I'll add them into the ranking, and I'll just keep ranking. And it's very difficult, and sometimes it feels like you lose sight of the plot because it's like, wow, like we're so far into these rankings that they're like cemented in these positions. It's like, do I really believe this or not? You have to reevaluate really to have an accurate assessment of these movies. But yeah, I thought it'd be fun. I'll run down the ranking. Obviously, it'll be a different amount of movies each month if I continue to do it, and you never know what you're going to get. But I want to say I've been on a huge movie kick. Last year, my movie goal, or the amount of movies I watched last year, was 53. And that was big for me. That was more than I'd ever watched in 1 year before. And then my goal was just to keep pace with that this year and watch 50. And just to preface, I watched 23 movies in February alone. And that's not including there was a ton in, well, not a ton, but a good amount, a chunk in January as well. So already like significantly, I think at the time of this video, I have like 34 movies I've watched this year. So already through most of the goal with like not even a fourth of the year through. So I think I'm doing just fine there. But I was having a lot of fun. I also wanted to do videos on the Best Picture nominees and Oscar nominees in general, so I was making an exerted effort to watch all of the Best Picture nominees at the very least, as well as the ones that had Best Actor and Actress nominations and all the Best Animated Feature nominees as well. So that's what a lot of these are. But also a couple like movies that had big awards buzz previous years I'd never got the chance to watch, as well as a couple random that I threw in the mix too. So you never know what you're going to get each month. But you could definitely see where it was skewing if you look at the first couple of months of this year for my movie watching history. It was definitely trying to catch up on that award hype in time for the Oscars in March. So my other thing I want to say before starting is that this is absolutely an incredibly difficult list. And I'm not like 100% even looking at this list, and I can't say it with confidence at all. Even the top few, the order of those, any of the order in the middle, it's really tough. And at the end of the day, I'm not like saying my number 10 is way better than number 15, that kind of thing. So I wouldn't take it too much to heart, the ranking, because the other preface I wanted to make is that every movie on this list, there's not a single bad movie here. So, I mean, good month for me. I just happened to pick, well, it was a lot of award-nominated ones, which tended to be good. Luckily, I watched Emilia Perez the month before, but it was a lot of award-nominated movies, as well as like previously award-nominated movies and other acclaimed movies. So it was just all firing on all cylinders. I didn't watch any random movies that might have thrown a wrench in it at all. So this is probably an exceptionally stellar list for a ranking. So from top to bottom, they're all good movies. Just the bottom ones, the ones at the bottom were like decent or and then we quickly get to really great movies for most of the top half. So yeah, buckle in. And I hope I don't offend too many people with my rankings. There's some absolute killers in here, so naturally there's going to be some major snubs, and you might disagree, but that's fine. Sound off in the comments below which ones of these movies have you seen? Any thoughts on them? Thoughts on their ranking in this list? What do you think? Coming in at number 23 is Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul. This is a 2024 movie that was nominated for Best Animated Feature. And from all accounts that I've seen online, like, people really love this movie. I mean, there's a cult following behind Wallace and Gromit in general. A very British movie. It won a BAFTA for this one, so I get it. This is my first ever experience with Wallace and Gromit, period. I had seen clips here and there, and I knew generally, I knew the vibe, but I had never sat down and watched one that I can recall. So I wanted to watch all the best animated ones to have a pick in that race. And so I watched it, and I wasn't blown away. This is the one, I give this a 6.5 out of 10 generally. So this is the bottom of the list, 6.5, and it only goes up from here. So to give you some context, not a bad movie by any means. I love the stop motion animation for it. It's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I'll never get tired of it. But to me, the story wasn't very remarkable. It was generally an unremarkable movie to me. And with any of these, you can check them out, Letterboxd review, for more details. If any of them are scant, you don't have very many details, feel free to ask me further questions if you want to know more my takes. But obviously, I don't want to go too in depth on each one because there's 23 movies to get through, and we'll be here for a while. Number 22, A Complete Unknown. Another one that had a lot of Academy Awards and actually took home none of them. Now that we know the result, I kind of agree with that. It's hard to talk about because it informs my list, but I also did mention this in my Oscar video that I think there are certain movies that were more deserving of nominations than A Complete Unknown in multiple categories. And we'll see some much later in the list that I think should have been in place, of especially this and Emilia Perez in multiple categories. Complete Unknown, I think, is a fine movie. I think there's some really good stuff about it. I think Timothée Chalamet is great in it. The music is generally really cool. I mean, I didn't know much about Bob Dylan in general going into this movie, so I was excited to learn more. Let's get into it. And I left feeling a little bit unsatisfied with what we got. Timothée Chalamet's performance is great and it's really believable, but it's not necessarily someone I was enthused about, and I don't think you're supposed to be. And I just thought it was fine, and I thought it was kind of wild that it was getting nominated for as many things as it was, for being just a fine movie in my book even, or books. Number 21, Nickel Boys. This is the biggest one that you might take issue with if you're a Nickel Boys fan. Completely understand. For me, the POV style didn't work too much. I wasn't a huge fan of it, of the very in-your-face directing style, where it's you can't forget for a second that this is a movie, with how it's filmed, because it's very much, we're in the perspective like a first-person shooter type. And I get there's some really cool stuff they did stylistically, and I applaud the directing for that. I do. For that alone, I feel like the director was worth nominating over the director for A Complete Unknown, but even if I didn't necessarily agree with all the choices and it didn't work for me as much. Ultimately, when I came out of Nickel Boys, though, I really appreciated the reveal we get towards the end and some of those more meaningful plot points that are based in reality. But I really thought that this was a movie I might appreciate more on a different day if I was in a different headspace. There's a couple of movies I run into like that, where it's it didn't really resonate with me as much as I thought it was going to. So maybe that's just the case, and I do explain that I don't agree with some of the directing choices for me personally, but it also could be the case that on a different day, with a new look at it, I think I could appreciate it more. There's been plenty of movies where I've done that, and really grown to love a movie. So absolutely, this is not a testament to it being a bad movie at all. Like I said, they're all good movies here. Number 20, The Apprentice. This is another one that was Sebastian Stan was nominated for Best Actor. That was the one award that they got this. It really got me to watch it. I had no interest. I had no idea what the take on it was. Was it a positive view, negative view? I don't know. I didn't know going into it, but it becomes very clearly that it's very much a set on Donald Trump and this devolving, almost heel turn, like villain. If Donald Trump wasn't actually the subject of it, it could be a pretty interesting villain, like turned super villain story arc type of thing. Even if there wasn't necessarily a cause for it, it was kind of unjustified, and that was kind of part of why it wasn't quite a stellar experience for me, because it just wasn't super enjoyable. There was no one to really enjoy, no one to root for, and there are movies like that that work really well. This just wasn't one of them. I thought the performance was good. I thought it was really cool how he became more and more like Donald Trump as the movie went on. He really adapted the mannerisms and the dramatics more and more. But I didn't think it was necessarily an Academy worth nominating for an Academy Award. But that's just me personally. I still enjoyed it, and he's definitely the most enjoyable part of it. For a movie that I think that's the biggest detriment to me, is it just wasn't very, very interesting, exciting to watch. It's like we know how the story ends, even if it's years later, and even this story isn't that interesting on the surface. So, but I did appreciate a lot that they did with it, and yeah, I'm glad I watched it at least. Number 19, Borat subsequent movie film. Yes, this is I had seen Borat years ago at this point, and I just never got around to watching this one. It came out right at COVID times, 2020, and it largely centered, like, it worked that into the narrative of this, and it didn't quite hit the same magic that Borat did for me. Some stuff was really funny to me, and then some stuff it just didn't work for me as much. I thought that was like a little too, like, they just kept, like, I don't know, it wore thin a little bit to me, the shtick. But for the most part, like, I still had a lot of fun looking up reactions to this, and it was very much like a movie I loved to see how people react to certain moments. Maria Bakalova, amazing. Kind of amazing she was nominated for a performance in this movie, which is one of those pseudo, it's like a mockumentary style, and there's like a narrative to it, but that's not really what you're watching for. You're watching for the antics that Borat gets into. And then now Maria Bakalova's character as well, and she's like front and center. She almost steals the show. Like, Borat has some great moments, but she's really like the shining star here. This is what I'll remember from this movie, if nothing else. So I loved that. The Rudy Giuliani stuff was wild. I don't know why I'd never really heard of that, or maybe it's one of those things where I glossed over it because I hadn't seen the movie. So only now I'm like realizing, wow, that was like crazy they caught this kind of stuff on camera. And I applaud them for the direction they went with it. Just wasn't on the level of the original Borat for me, but not bad by any means. I'm noticing now that I had back-to-back 2 movies with Maria Bakalova in it. It's funny it worked out this way in the ranking too, because I actually watched Borat subsequent movie film on the 15th, and then on the 16th I watched The Apprentice. Completely coincidentally, by the way. I just happened to watch Borat, and then The Apprentice was another one on my list for the nominee for Sebastian Stan, so it just happened to be like, oh, whoa, that's her. Wow, that took me by surprise. I never knew. So, there you go. Number 18, A Different Man. This is one I'm quite conflicted on. There's some points where I find really brilliant about this movie, and it was like gearing up to be like a 8 out of 10 movie for me, at least. And there were just other parts with it that I thought were weird, the way they handled the story and how it ultimately resolved. I thought they kind of dropped the ball on some things. You can check my little blurb on Letterboxd to give you more of my first impression. But I was definitely, after watching it, immediately my thoughts were, I'm conflicted, because I really liked some stuff, and some stuff didn't work for me as much. But Sebastian Stan delivers another solid performance here. It's crazy, in two award-nominated movies in the same year. We had a couple of that. We had Sebastian Stan and Timothée Chalamet in 2 major nominees here. But Adam Pearson was also awesome as Oswald in this movie. Really cool, and they did some really good effects that they used for Sebastian Stan as well that were really believable if you looked at it and didn't know it was a movie. Really well done as far as the makeup goes for that, and prosthetics, whatever else is involved. Like I said, there's some scenes that were really compelling to me, and other stuff that didn't work as much. So left me conflicted, and ultimately down here at a 7 out of 10 range for me. So still mostly good, which is my take for most all these movies. So yeah. Number 17, One of Them Days. This is the movie starring SZA and Keke Palmer, a fun little dynamic duo. I thought it was a fun movie. It's purely just a fun movie. Just go in, turn your brain off. Don't think too deeply about it. There's not a huge provocative narrative that you gotta really sink your brain teeth into. It's just a sit back and enjoy movie, and I really appreciated it for that. I think it was great for it. Some of the jokes didn't land as much, but there was plenty in there. There was enough material that really offset that, and found myself laughing and enjoying it more than I didn't. So I recommend it if you want a fun comedy. Absolutely check it out. It's funny. Just was never going to go all the way towards the top of my rankings on any given list, but I appreciate it for what it was. Number 16, Poor Things. This was another one of those random, previously award-winning movies that I decided to check out that I had missed out on from 2023. Stars Emma Stone in a brilliant performance, absolutely deserving. As deserving as I can say without having seen probably the other nominees. I don't remember. I wasn't as tapped in as definitely I was this year, making sure to watch all the nominees, but it was a brilliant performance and a really bizarre concept that ends up being like, wow, so weird that it worked in different ways. A lot of furious jumping, which I just love. I love that phrasing. It's just a brilliant phrase, and you would understand if you watch the movie. You'll understand where that's coming from. Obviously, it's just really fascinating. It's weird, I don't think it hit for me as much as it did for other people, maybe, but I mean, I admire for the production and the performances. Mark Ruffalo is great as well, and I just like some weird stuff right now. There's a couple of weird things in this list. Well, not too many, just a couple. I think there's one more. This is the major one I'm thinking of, but yeah, I enjoyed it for sure. And it's the performances that are key here, and some great direction as well. Number 15, Look Back. This is an animated movie, which I quite enjoyed. It's an anime style, really interesting, really unique art style to it. It's anime style, but it's a distinctly like emphasis on the hand-drawn nature to it, because it is centered around manga and how these two characters end up bonding over it, and the interesting dynamics that come out of it, and some interesting twists and turns we go down. Just interesting choices in the story structure, the plot structure, that I appreciated ultimately more than I didn't. And I'll say my friend Alec over at Tarkaron, the channel we do together, he spoke very highly of it. He had it as like his favorite thing that he had watched from this year. Definitely not at that level for me. It didn't hit as hard for me, but I appreciate it for what it is. And I do think it might have been deserving of a nomination for Best Animated Feature. Personally, though, I would only probably swap out Wallace and Gromit for it, and it just wasn't going to happen. There's more people on board for that than Look Back is much more of a niche pick, but I appreciate it. It was cool. The way it really hones in on grief, especially in the final act of the movie, is where it really shines, and that's where it hit for me. Like most of the movie, I was thinking it's okay, but that really elevated a bit for me. So, number 14, Will and Harper. This little documentary. This one I have a hard time ranking because I think it's great for what it is, but obviously hard to say it's better than some of these award-winning movies with full-on plots, screenplays, and performances in the mix. So this is kind of where it ended up, and I'm still not confident on it, because I could easily say some of the other ones below it are better than it, but it's hard. It's always my hardest part is working in these documentaries. with ranking them against scripted films. And that's why ranking all these things together doesn't necessarily, it's not going to be definitive, and it's not a science by any means. So, Will and Harper, I really enjoyed it though, because I thought it was really refreshing take in a world where like the idea of being trans is like so often like a controversial topic for whatever reason. Like this really does a great job of humanizing it in a meaningful way. I appreciated it. It was like Will Ferrell and his friend just had this conversation, just sit down. Well, they went on a road trip together. This is the whole plot. It's just, let's go on a road trip together and like try to come to a new understanding. What does this mean for us in our friendship dynamic? Like, should I change how I approach this, how I do that? And it was cool. It was just like Will Ferrell generally approaching it in a respectful way and in a genuinely thoughtful manner. And it was just like, it was refreshing. There's not much to it in terms of what happens, because it's not like, whoa, unexpected plot twist here and there, or even like a documentary where there's tons of like interviews adding more context. It's literally just following these two and seeing how their friendship unfolds from this. And Will Ferrell's friend coming out as trans at such an old age. It's a unique dynamic. I don't think it's explored very much, and I think it was an important story that was told very well. So I would say like any people that give issues for like when it comes to trans topics, or like don't understand it, at least maybe they're not like overtly offensive about it, they just don't understand it, I would say point them in the direction of this movie. And if they don't understand after it, then it might be a lost cause. But I think it does a good job of like just approaching it at a human level, and it's effective. It's good. Number 13, I'm Still Here. That's a great movie. This is about this is set in the early 1970s, and it follows the time in Brazil where there's a dictatorship going on, the military is involved, and all sorts of shady stuff is going on from the hands of the government. This is a subject I was completely blind to, and I love a movie like this that did just lend a perspective on a story that I was too ignorant about, and probably a lot of other people also didn't know anything about. And it's a really important film in that way. Really great. I don't think it goes up to the upper echelon of like some of the people had this as their favorite movie of the year. Absolute respect for it. I love the direction of it. I love how they made such a charming family. Like immediately, you're completely on board with this family and their fun dynamic. They rope you in immediately, and it's so well done. It just feels so natural. Like this could easily just be a documentary I'm watching almost. And it's really brutal, and it's powerful, and I think it's an important movie. Fernanda Torres is brilliant. She's beautiful and brilliant in this movie. I think her performance was awesome. Very deserving. It was a tough year for the Best Actress category. Multiple very deserving nominees that could have won any other year. That's the kind of the arbitrary nature of award season. These movies just happen to land on the one year. It could be like the 5 best movies of the past decade when they all land on one year and only one of them gets to win. Same with the performances. It's like, wow. I could easily see them saying this is an Oscar-winning performance from Fernanda Torres and completely believing it. But just wasn't in the cards. But absolutely deserving of mentions everywhere. I thought it was great. On the surface, this is probably one of the movies that people are least likely to have seen on this ranking, because it was, and still is probably, I don't know, when I was trying to catch up on the awards, it was only available in theaters. And for me personally, it wasn't available to anyone in my immediate vicinity. I had to go 45 minutes out of the way just to make sure I watched this movie in time. And so I don't think it got watched. I don't think it got enough eyes on it that it deserved. So it's one of those, if you're not following the Oscar race, you probably didn't see this one. And it's a shame. So hopefully more people can check it out. Number 12, The Brutalist. Another great film that was nominated for Best Picture. and I think deservedly so. Some brilliant direction. Production design is absolutely beautiful. Like some, because essentially the main character is an architect. Like that's his profession. It's what he's good at, and you see it on full display very early on in the movie. It's beautiful, like library. Like that's what I'm talking about in terms of the production design. How good it is. Adrian Brody's performance is amazing. I never really knew much about Adrian Brody, except for that he did that Halle Berry kiss at the Oscars years ago. And after the fact, I learned that he was the youngest to ever win the Best Actor Oscar, and then he prevented Timothée Chalamet from being the new youngest. So that was funny, funny little trivia there. But I didn't really know much about him. I don't think I've really seen much of his work. So I think it's even more a testament to him as an actor that when like he started speaking to accept the award, it was like mind blowing to me. His performance is so drastically different from how he just speaks in everyday life. He brilliantly captured this character who's so wildly different from how he handles himself. Really well done. And I will say 3.5 hours is generally too long for me, and I still kind of hold that. I think almost no matter how good the movie is, it's still too long for me. Like it could be the best movie I've ever seen. 3.5 hours is still too long. But this is about as palatable as it gets for me for a movie of this length. It was directed in a way that actually really got me. I was fully invested and following along. Even as it felt like not much was happening in the first half, I was still fully there and like I'm like in with this guy and following his story. So, yeah. So while The Brutalist wasn't necessarily at the top of my favorite movies of the year, it's definitely I see it being deserving and absolutely great movie. Number 11, Easy A. That's right, Easy A is objectively the better movie than is a better movie than The Brutalist. And I'm still here. And these other really nickel boys, Poor Things, is better than all of them. Definitively. No, it's really tough. This one was like, I could really fluctuate a bit with this one. This one was one of the harder ones to peg. I think you could go down a few slots pretty easily. But I just found it so charming. And if you notice, like, it's another Emma Stone movie. It was after I watched Poor Things, I was kind of like on a little bit of an Emma Stone kick. As much of a kick as you can get. I mean, I only watched 2 movies. I really should just go down a rabbit hole, just watch them all that I haven't seen. But these, I thought it was great. I think she was really great as the lead for this. That was 15 years ago at this point, 2010. So much younger Emma Stone still carried it. Like, it's wild to contrast the 2 performances that I just watched on display. They were both brilliant in different ways and wildly different. This is another case where some of the humor didn't land for me. It just didn't hit as much. And maybe it would have if I was more in the age demographic or watched it more when I was the age demographic for it, like in the high school years. But it didn't really matter to me so much because there was so many like good bits and jokes per minute mixed in there that it made up for it, offset it. Like I said, with One of Them Days, I think is what I talked about. So yeah, it's not quite on the level of a super bad for me. Like that's one like kind of my gold standard when I think of these 2000s comedy movies, coming of age. That's one of my favorites there, and that's another one I had only watched a few years ago for the first time. But it's not quite at that level, but definitely great and glad I watched. I really love the parent characters. Stanley Tucci, who I saw in another movie later this year as well, which is very different. He's awesome. I just love the parent dynamic. It was such a refreshing dynamic that they had with their daughter. It was a standout for me. Number 10, Memoirs of a Snail. This is the weirdest fuck, other weirdest fuck one that I'm talking about here. Wow, that was weird. That's some weird shit. And it really grew on me. Like at first, I liked it. It was just like, what did I just watch? It didn't really set in. And then the more I think about it, the more I like it. I fuck with weird shit. I just do. On a fundamental level, I fuck with weird shit. And this was not only weird, It was dark. It resonated emotionally. It was powerful. It was impactful, while also like being super weird. Like it struck a weird balance between all these things and held them. And I thought it was great. The stop motion animation, which of course I give credit to Wallace and Gromit for as well. And Wallace and Gromit's been doing it, holding it down for decades. But I loved it in this, and it was especially the character designs in this were like so weird and so distinct that it really stood out to me in this movie as well. Wow, weird. Wow, I was just like taken aback. I had no idea what I was getting into, and then when a character started talking about masturbating, I was like, "Whoa, this is what we're in for." I had no idea. I come into some of these blind. Like I just see it was nominated for Best Animated Feature. Let's check it out. Expecting a cute little story about a snail, but not what it was. Number 9, Conclave. That music lives rent free in my head still. Like I keep thinking, like every day I'm thinking of those chords. Like such strong music. I love the score in that movie, and like The Brutalist, the score in that is great as well. And I know it's probably better. It just didn't work for me as much as it did in Conclave, and it's always stood out to me in Conclave. I love the score there. It gives the movie a whole other identity that I think it wouldn't have otherwise. It would probably feel much more dry if you didn't just add the drama. It's just so funny. This one I'm conflicted on. The part of the ending, I'm not going to go into detail or anything. I didn't like have an issue with it. Obviously, like that's a reality, and that's like a story that's not really explored very often. But it just felt weirdly out of place, and it wasn't a satisfying point to the plot. I feel like they could have really fed it in there more to make it more satisfying. But that didn't take away from the fact the movie was really cool and had a lot of fun twists and turns that were compelling. And I thought it's kind of funny if you think about it with how serious it's portrayed and everything. It really is like a reality TV show with how there's like strategizing, trying to get the votes, and like it's like they're literally competing. They're competing in a reality competition show, and I was here for it. I was here for the drama and the mess. So it's funny, but even taking it for what it is, it's really well done. It's really well directed. Another one where the director deserved to be nominated over Jacques Audiard and the director for A Complete Unknown as well. It's a great movie. This was another one I was kind of torn on. Could go a couple pegs down, potentially. I'm not sure. Really, not even worth mentioning. This whole list is in flux. Aside for the bottom, like 6... like except for the bottom part, I think everything else could be moved around for the most part. Number 8, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Yeah, this is a wild, out of left field pick. All these other movies, it's like 2024, 2024, 2024, 2025, 2010, and then boom, 1996, Hunchback of Notre Dame. I've just never watched it, and it's always one in the back of my mind. I heard good things about. People talked it up before, and I just never checked it out. And it was my birth year, 1996, so absolutely shout out one time for that. I thought it was great. The music, I heard the music talked up so much that it didn't quite hit for me as much in the music department. And as far as like a lot of the Disney music of this age is music that I could listen to independently of the movie and get just as much enjoyment out of. Like there's just absolute bangers. And I just didn't feel that with this. I felt like they were very important to the plot, moved the plot along well, but I couldn't see myself listening to them much outside of the movie. We're separate from the plot. So take that for what you will. But what we did get, I enjoyed quite a bit. I liked Quasimodo and Esmeralda quite a bit. And then Phoebus, I think his name is as well. The guy, I liked him as well. Like I actually really liked the main cast. Frollo as a villain, he's despicable. He's awesome. Like it's really good. It's a really good villain, and really took me out when I had no idea the performances in this movie, but when I just started hearing Patrick Star, the voice actor for Patrick Star was in this movie. He's one of the gargoyles, and it took me out. It was literally it was not just Patrick Star's voice actor. It was like I was hearing Patrick Star. It was done the exact same delivery as Patrick Star. And then George Costanza, his voice in there as well. They both took me out. I was like, whoa, that I did not know they were in there. And also kind of Demi Moore as Esmeralda. I had no idea. So you'll see later in the list another movie from Demi Moore from 2024. I wonder what that is. But literally 28 movies after she did this voice, I had no idea. An absolute legend. This movie to me is in a similar box now as like Treasure Planet, as maybe not the best Disney movies, but true hidden gems. And I think it deserves more appreciation now. Number 7, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. It's a movie from 2012 that I had never seen as well. Another like coming of age, young adult type movie. That's the only thing really holding it back for me is the young adultification of it. It definitely has that bit of cheese layered on top. You can definitely feel in certain key scenes and in certain deliveries. It's like very dramatic. It's like, I've always loved you. That's just how it is. And then going for a passionate kiss, like that kind of like soap opera element to it. But that's like the young adult movie type vibe that it brings. But beyond that, it's a great movie. If you want to check out my detailed thoughts on it, we actually did a review for Tarkaron. Our friend Rusty has sent us a physical version of this, the Blu-ray, and encouraged us to do a review at some point. So that we did, and definitely enjoyed it. I loved the emotional impact that you get from it, and the performances from our main cast as well. They're all great. And it's another one I'm torn on, because I like rated it higher than most of the ones below it, but I could definitely see it being below a lot of them. Like it really sliding down like multiple spots. It's tough. It's really tough. But I loved what we had. I more and more have grown to appreciate movies that just make me feel things, like truly feel things. And that's what kind of separates sometimes. Like if a movie brings me to tears, it's gonna be hard for me to knock it too much, because rarely does like a poorly made movie bring me to tears, or just an okay movie bring me to tears. It's really like when I think about it, I sit back, I'm like, wow, that was an amazing movie because of how the impact it had on me. Make me sad, make me laugh, make me overcome with joy. These are all important. It's not all just about crying, but just the power of emotion that it has on you. As much as I might enjoy a movie like One of Them Days and have fun and appreciate it for what it is, it's that emotional next level that kind of keeps it from rising to the pantheon for me. But all right, all that to be said, I was a crybaby watching some of these movies. Number 6, Flow. Shout out to Flow. All right, The Wild Robot will not be on this list. I've seen The Wild Robot last year when it came out in theaters. An amazing movie, The Wild Robot, and an amazing movie, Flow. That was one of the awards where going into it, I was like, The Wild Robot I think is slightly better in my mind, and personally for me, I think I enjoyed it a little bit more, but I wouldn't be mad at either of them winning. And it almost was the more satisfying win to see Flow win over a big studio like DreamWorks. It's obviously going to be much more impactful to see such a small studio, Latvia, win an award like that from Latvia. So that was cool. It was a cool moment to see that win, because it was not what everybody had predicted on their bingo cards for the Oscars, and I was glad to see it. It's really something special to have a movie be so good and so charming without a single line of dialogue. Not a human. Not a human to be found. There's simultaneously a really charming story here where you follow a cat encountering different animals, moving through different obstacles that are presented to him. But also, there's an added layer of like mystery surrounding everything. Like, where are we? Is this like a post-apocalyptic world we're living in, where the animals are just trying to get by? It starts to seem like it, and it's kind of like really compelling. So where you're like, yeah, there's no words being spoken, but you're dialed in. You're like, what's gonna happen next? And it's just so charming, and I really applaud it. It's a great movie. Number 5, Howard. Howard is a documentary from 2018 following Howard Ashman, who's responsible for some of the biggest, like, most impactful Disney songs and other productions. Had such a big impact. And again, I said earlier, it's hard to place documentaries. It really is. Because there's some brilliant movies that are below it in the rankings. And can I safely say that this is better than that? No, as far as the documentary goes, it's actually really not, there's not much to it. Like, it really is bare bones to the extent that even when you have interviews from people, adding more detail to it, even when you're getting these interviews with people, adding supplemental or additional context to what's being said about Howard, you don't see them on screen. It's just their voice over top, like, just like basically a compilation of pictures, videos. So it's a very simple documentary in that way, but I admire it for, like, again, for me, it's the emotional resonance, and it really resonated with me on an emotional level. It was impactful to me. I thought it was a beautiful telling of his story, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed it, and it stuck with me. So it's like more so than like objectively saying this is a brilliant film, brilliant direction. You know, there's like not really any direction to be found. It was just editing and then voice acting or sound work. But I liked it. It just like laid the story out there, and it was there to see. There was no like clear narrative being put down on it, like this is one way or another. It's just here's how people felt about him, here's what transpired, here's what he did, and it's great. Number 4, The Substance. Brilliant movie. Demi Moore, I love you. She's brilliant in it. More and more I'm becoming increasingly impressed by these women who go into these movies and are completely vulnerable on camera in a way that I had seen in movies years ago. Like, this was never a thing to me. Like, not only completely nude, but in a way that's so, like, brutal. Like, the whole point when she's looking at herself in the mirror and she's got no clothes on, the whole point is she's looking at her imperfections. And, like, you get camera shots of her from behind, from the front. You get every angle of her body. Well, it's not supposed to be like we're watching, like, oh, look at that body. Like, she's obviously a beautiful person and has aged gracefully. But it's the way she's seeing herself and the way she has to feel looking at herself in the mirror. When it's like, that's her that she's looking at. And that's also simultaneously this character. So it's a wild thing to be that vulnerable. And then there's scenes where she's on the floor, and then all this crazy stuff transpires. Her body's just there, like, and then it's just next level. The psychological hoops you got to go through to play a role like that. I admire it so much because like I admired the vulnerability of this role, and I think it was so effective. And I also say, like, I admired Mikey Madison's vulnerability in Honora as well. To whereas like in the context when she's nude, it's not about like imperfections by any means, but it is still very vulnerable. Her putting herself out there. She's literally putting on a performance within a performance, like doing sex work and whatnot. Anora won't be on this list, by the way, because I watched it the month previously, but I really enjoyed it. But this is just a different degree, you know. You're nude and you're not putting on a show. Like, you're supposed to almost be ashamed of yourself, so much to the extent that she, like, you know, she misses the youth that she had and makes the drastic decision that leads to the events in this film, which turned into a movie I had no idea what I was getting into. Again, it was another one. It was fun to go in blind and be absolutely blindsided by the chaos and the fuckery that was about to transpire. Wow. An amazing movie that is surely not for everyone. It's how much can you tolerate body horror, grotesque shit, stuff like that, you know? It's wild. But the easiest win and the most deserving win of the Oscars was the makeup and hairstyling for this movie. Like, none of the other categories was so painfully obvious which one would win and deserved to win. It was this, and it was brilliant work. And wow. Another regret, or another thing I disagree with, no regret, but I wish Margaret Qualley would have been nominated for Best Supporting Actress, especially over some of these nominees, like a Isabella Rossellini, who was like barely in Conclave. Like, easily she would be over her, and then a couple of the others as well. Like, come on, she was like almost as present as Demi Moore in this movie, and while it's not as effective as Demi Moore, it's still a great performance. But yeah, so that's a shame. But a brilliant movie. I'm glad I got some recognition for it. Again, it's hard though, because like I know, like, if I were to recommend this movie, some people just wouldn't work for it all. Some people would not be into it for sure. So that's where you just got to know who you're recommending it to. Like, number 3, The Whale. The Whale. This is another Oscar award-winning movie in different. I can't remember. Did it ultimately win Best Picture, or was it not even nominated for Best Picture? I'm not sure. Again, I wasn't dialed in. All I know is that Brendan Fraser won for Best Actor, and I think definitely deservedly so. I thought it was a brilliant performance. That's the standout of this movie. His performance drives the entire movie. On the surface, this movie is like very bare bones. There's not much to it. It's simple. It takes place in one location the entire movie. It's set on one performance and then a couple key supporting performances, but mostly on one performance with not much happening, you know, and that's all very intentional to me. It is like, it comes from a play, and it's very clear in the direction of the movie, and the fact that it is all set in a way that you, like, this could very easily lend itself to a play. Oh, that explains it, because it came from a play. The way the characters come in, they come in the door, like, well, here's another character, here's the character coming back, and I think it's brilliant. I thought, again, I gotta give it up for a movie that emotionally was, wow, so effective on me, and I thought it was beautifully written. The screenplay is amazing. The makeup for this movie, again, back to back, is amazing, and I give it a lot of credit for that. It's so good, and I thought the supporting performances were great and effective as well. But Brendan Fraser really steals the show, and this movie would be nothing if he didn't have that caliber of a performance. And it's just that powerful that I really didn't mind that we weren't going to different places or having crazy stuff happening. It was just all on the character interactions and the humanity of it and the writing, the dialogue. So yeah, it's so good. And it's another one like that I just randomly mixed in while I'm doing this year's Academy Award season. Just another one that had so much award buzz I never watched. So mixed it in there. Number 2, Marriage Story. Here you go. Here's another one. 2019 Marriage Story, which saw nominations for both Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson. Now, finally, seeing it for myself, I thought so often I thought about watching this movie. I thought it would be a movie right up my alley. Because purely, just like The Whale and this, I'm just a sucker for these movies that are like, they're raw, they're emotional. You're gonna feel something. You're not gonna sit here watch this movie and not feel a thing. Like, if you've ever experienced love in any capacity, I feel like it hits especially hard because like you can imagine the emotional roller coaster you go on through this, and it's really a compelling take on a marriage that does not last, and you see through the divorce, and you see how it resolves. Like, and I think it's beautiful. It's really well written. Some great performances for sure. It just does a beautiful job at portraying the process of divorce and not only the heartbreak and the brutal feeling of going through a divorce, which is what you first think of, but also just all the other stuff that piles on top of it and makes it even harder. The legal proceedings, and in this case, a child being involved, and how much gravity that adds to the situation. And then now your partner, who you were like so devoted to for some time, is now not working in your best interest, but rather has to be self-interested from a legal perspective. And it's a really fascinating exploration of that. I thought it was great. I think movies like this and Past Lives, which was one of my favorites that I caught up on last year, they're not similar movies at all. They're not at all like, they're not going for similar things. Completely different stories, but I appreciate those movies I bring up specifically because they both have refreshing perspectives on love and how you go about telling that story in kind of like a thoughtful way, in kind of an unconventional way. And I admire them both very different, but very different ways. And yeah, it's just one of those. It's one of those movies, you know? Number 1, Sing Sing. I love Sing Sing. This is the one that was easiest for me to place, actually. Because I'll say, I give Letterboxd scores to all these. I had them ranked previously, but I don't know if these lines up with it perfectly, but I went ahead and ranked it in preparation for this video. But I basically used my out of 10 score that I reflected for these as a way to make it more easier to rank within them. This is the only one I had 9.5 out of 10. The previous 4 I had 9 out of 10, a couple 8.5s, a bunch of 8s, a couple 7.5s, a few 7s, and a 6.5. This is the one 9.5 that I could easily just throw at the top, and looking down the list, I don't question it at all. I thought it was a brilliant movie, and it's the biggest shame of the Oscar season for me. I thought it was the best. It was my favorite movie that I watched that came out in 2024. Well, technically it came out in 2023, but then came to the US in 2024. But for the purposes of the Oscars, it's a shame because clearly not enough people had seen it at the time of nominations, and then beyond that, so it did not get a Best Picture nominee, which it deserved easily. For me, over all the nominees, but at the very least over Emilia Perez and A Complete Unknown. Colman Domingo's performance was never even in the conversation as a contender. It was always Adrian Brody with an outside chance of Timothée Chalamet. And I thought Colman Domingo's performance in this movie was awesome. It was beautiful. And this movie just hit on another level for me again, emotionally. But I thought the writing was brilliant. The screenplay was awesome. And again, this is what pays sometimes about not knowing what you're going to watch. It just for me personally, I lucked out that I happened to, well, by virtue of them being nominated for different things, thanks to Colman Domingo, that got me to watch this, just because it was nominated for Best Actor. And I was shocked by the credits and to realize that this was like a true story, like based in reality and with like the actual actors in the mix. Like, that blew my mind. Wow. Like, it's immediately became one of my favorite movies, period. It's up there in my favorite lists for sure. I think it's beautifully written. I think it's powerful. I remember reading an excerpt of an interview where Colman Domingo said it was important to him to see black stereotypes being challenged, and not like leaning into black stereotypes, but kind of like rewriting those stereotypes, showing like, no, that's not how everybody is. That's like, this is a very real perspective of a group of predominantly black people really coming to love the arts, and this theater performing arts program in this prison, Sing Sing. So it's really cool. I mean, I love that. He also said that he wanted to show like a more vulnerable side of men being more vulnerable with each other, which is something you don't see, and I thought that was absolutely true. And a standout for me when I first watched the movie was like, wow, you never really see that. It's really refreshing. That it's like, yeah, they butt heads a little bit, a couple times, but that's not what the movie's all about. It's not just like men, we're men and we don't express our feelings. It's like most of them are very content and secure with their feelings and willing to share. And then there's like one guy that comes in the mix who's not, you can tell he's really hesitant. And then you see that evolve and everything with that. But it was just really nice to see men being that vulnerable. And I thought it was a perfect portrayal of something like that, and a beautiful story that was made all the better after seeing and learning the context of it all. So I can't recommend it enough. It's my biggest recommendation of the year 2024. And having seen all the Best Picture nominees and all the nominees that come from the acting categories, and then most of the other nominees, it's my favorite of them all. So I find it hard to believe that there are other 2024 movies that could challenge it. I'll try to clean up some of the ones I missed out on, but there's not many now at this point. So Sing Sing, it's pretty safe to say, is my favorite movie that came out last year, and it's awesome. You can I had to rent it to watch it, which was annoying with a lot of these, or with a few of these in preparation for the Oscars. I had to rent them because they weren't available in theaters or streaming at the time. But I believe this is coming to streaming March 21st on Max. So I heartily encourage you to get on board for that. It's well worth it. And yeah, that's it. That's my February. All the movies I watched in February ranked. Let me know your thoughts. Hope you enjoyed the video. It was actually a lot of fun breaking it down this way. So I would absolutely be down. Hopefully I can stick with it and keep doing it in future months. Hopefully that's something you look forward to. I've already got a few movies under my belt coming into March, you know. Well, we're well into March, but should be some fun ones to talk about. And not sure if it'll be on that level, that many, but still. I love movies, and just these past couple months have made me fall in love with movies all over again. Honestly, some just amazing series of movies that I've watched in a short amount of time, and I'm loving getting exposed to more of them. And like, because previous years I would not be getting a fraction of these, and then by the end of the year, maybe you've seen one or two Best Picture nominated movies, like really stellar movies from the year. So it's been a lot of fun, not only watching new movies, but obviously mixing in other award-winning movies from years past, as well as dipping into random archive movies. I basically have an ongoing watch list on Letterboxd that I'll add to whenever I see movies that interest me or I'd like to get to soon. And then when it's time for me to watch a movie, I'll just kind of do a quick scroll, see what I'm feeling, see what's available for me to watch right now, and go from there. So it's been fun. So thank you for watching. Appreciate it. If you want more content just like this, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below your thoughts, please. All right. That's it.